You're listening to the Chiropractic Connection, a podcast by chiropractors for chiropractors. In this month's episode, we interviewed our bronze partners from ChiroSecure, Dr. Stu Hoffman and Mr. Eric Hoffman. You are certainly in for a treat because this interview has the latest tea regarding the world of insurance in chiropractic. I am super excited to get into it. So sit back, relax, and let's get connected.
Have you ever wondered what makes chiropractic chiropractic? We don't always have the answers, but it never hurts to imagine.
Hello, GCA. Dr. Eric Plasker here with this month's Philosophy in Action segment sponsored by the 100-Year Lifestyle and our company, The Family Practice. And I want to give a shout out to ChiroSecure, GCA's sponsor. They are our malpractice insurance provider, and we have been with them for a long time. They are excellent. They are there for you. They were there for us when we have questions. Anytime my team has questions, they're there. They are proactive. They are ahead of the curve always. They are looking out for our behalf, and they work with our profession in a way that is just supportive and fantastic, and they're GCA sponsors, of course. So I want to give my insights, personal insights, 39 years in practice and never having a malpractice claim, and that does not happen by accident. It is very simple. We teach risk management programs all over the country. We've taught risk management programs at GCA seminars, and couple of quick things for this quick segment on this important topic. Number one, we always tell our team and we always tell doctors, our 100-Year Lifestyle affiliated offices around the country, do the right thing. Now, what's the right thing? Well, the right thing is you don't do anything just for the money. You are a chiropractor, so you work within the laws of the practice of chiropractic in the state of Georgia. You care about people. You are not looking to sell them something. You are looking to take care of them to make sure that they are healthy, that you can correct their condition and work with them if they want to over the long haul. Lifetime patients, that's what we do. That is the 100-Year Lifestyle way, but it's a choice. We don't bully anything on them. We don't coerce them. We don't scare care them. We just educate them so they can make good choices for themselves and their families. And we have good financial policies that are sound and solid and are within the law. And if there's ever a situation, like we actually had a situation today, it's interesting, I'm doing this segment where we had a patient come in and passed out in the reception room, literally. I caught her, Dr. Corey was in front of her talking to her. I caught her, she went down, we got her water, we got her electrolytes, we took care of her, we watched her, we monitored her vital signs, we documented everything, and she left here about 20 minutes later. She got adjusted when she was all settled down, and she left here very happy. Her friend that was with her was very happy. We took care of the situation, we documented it, and we did it in a way that was in line with the laws, what our general things that were normal things that we would need to do in a situation like that. And by the way, that hasn't happened in 35 years to me, so it's crazy that it happened today and I'm recording this segment today. So we did the right thing. You know what? She left this office and she loved us even more. So do the right things. Take care of your people. The next thing is don't do anything just for the money. That is really important. I find that doctors who are doing things just for the money end up getting in trouble because you're not really caring about the patient. You don't really, you're not paying attention necessarily. Your team's not paying attention in the way that they should be. You don't have the patient's best interest at heart. So if there are things that you know what, I'm going to do this and I'm just going to do it for the money and the patient doesn't need it, then in my suggestion, it's probably not a legal suggestion or a malpractice insurance question like ChiroSecure would answer, but I really believe that's a good policy because ultimately, if something does happen where somebody gets injured or somebody gets harmed in some way, shape, or form, if you have a good relationship with them because you've done the right things and they trust you because they've done the right things, then you're going to come out way ahead and you're not going to have to look behind you, look over your shoulder all the time because you did something wrong that wasn't the right thing for the patient. So that's a really important fact. And then communicate with your team at ChiroSecure or your malpractice provider. Use them for sources of information. You know, after 39 years in business, and we've literally helped chiropractors grow through the 100-Year Lifestyle and educational processes that we provide. We've helped them grow literally collectively by over $1 billion, delivering high integrity, lifetime chiropractic care to more people, thousands of doctors collectively combined. And what is true and what is really important with all of these people is that if you have people, the relationships where people love you, they care about you because of the way you care about them, you put out those good vibes, that good mojo, that honest, ethical care, then they will be the number one supporter, so that if God forbid something ever happens, they know you are on their side. We have patients, like for example, with auto accident cases, where the patient had, there was something where the lawyer didn't pay the doctor or pay us or pay one of our clients or something like that. And the patient, because of the relationship with the doctor and the trust they had and the love they had for the doctor and the office that they were seeing and they were in, they literally would go after the lawyer and say, you better pay my doctor. You better make sure you take care of my doctor. Why? Because you've built a relationship and you love them and you care about them. And you know what? That's the chiropractic way. That's the way that we need to do things to take care of our people. So when you meet with ChiroSecure or your malpractice insurance company, use them from an educational perspective to truly understand. Read their newsletters, ask the tough questions. Don't be afraid. If you have a situation that arises, call them. Don't wait. Don't stew on it. You don't want to have that in your gut where you're insecure or you're uncertain when a patient comes in because you don't have the confidence, because you think that something might be wrong and you might not be doing something the right way to help your patients, especially if there is a situation. When you look at your insurance companies, lawyers, things that you're dealing with, use them for education. They have knowledge that you don't have. They know the law better than you. They know insurance better than you. What's great about ChiroSecure is they do educational programs that I have been a part of, some of my friends have been a part of, where they're really wanting you to understand so that you can be proactive and prevent claims. So there's a lot that you can do. Attend the upcoming seminar with GCA, the risk management seminar. Sit in class, pay attention, learn from everybody, and get your hands on as many people as possible so that you can help them live their best life every day for 100 years and beyond. That's the 100-year lifestyle way. That's the chiropractic way, helping people live at their highest level, function at their highest level for a lifetime. So we'll see you soon in an upcoming seminar. Thanks for being a member of GCA.
Why choose Barber Orthopedics and Spine over a traditional hospital? Our award-winning orthopedic surgeons specialize in all parts of the body. We utilize cutting-edge technology with the most modern advances in medicine. We are on a mission with you to address your totality. We treat the person, not just the symptoms. Your wait is always 15 minutes or less because we value your time. We are privately owned, and we get you the personal VIP treatment you won't get anywhere else. We are a proud partner of the Georgia Chiropractic Association and offer our support to the entire chiropractic community. Barber Orthopedics and Spine, exceptional care you can count on.
And now for the moment everyone has been waiting for, starring this month's experts.
All right, welcome back everyone to the Chiropractic Connection, a podcast for chiropractors by chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Amber Jackson, and today I have with me the amazing Dr. Stu Hoffman and his brilliant son, Mr. Eric Hoffman. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thanks for having us
here.
For sure. We'll let the audience decide if I'm really brilliant, but I appreciate the kind words.
Well, I think if you helped your dad build ChiroSecure to what it is, I'm going to put you in the category of brilliant. Thank you. We'll get into it, and then they'll see what I'm talking about.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I know if you all are not familiar with the Hoffmans, they are the founders and owners of ChiroSecure, the malpractice insurance. And so we wanted to bring them on today so that we can have a conversation about malpractice insurance, what it looks like, the landscape of it, and maybe answer some questions. I do know that there are a lot of new docs that are always trying to figure out, who do I choose? Where do I go? I know I need malpractice insurance. I don't know the nitty-gritties of it. And maybe they don't understand the importance of it. And even down to how much malpractice really has our back in the landscape of chiropractic and how you guys protect our profession. So I definitely would love to just kind of start off with a brief introduction on the two of you, who you are, where you hail from, just a little bit more about yourself. So Dr. Hoffman, I'll let you go first.
Oh, thank you. So I'm a native New Yorker that found my way to Atlanta, Georgia, to go and become a chiropractor. And I graduated Life College at the time, back in 1981. And I loved the institution. I still do today. And I was taught directly by Sid Williams that you should never forget where you come from and always give back. And we've tried to live that principle for all of these years, and hopefully pass that on to other generations beyond my own. And, with ChiroSecure directly, I practiced first and foremost as a chiropractor. I did so in Michigan, and then a number of years later, moved our entire family out west to Scottsdale, Arizona. And it was in that timeline that we really developed ChiroSecure. And, without getting into all the nitty gritty, it's gone through some evolution over the years. And it's great to have all three of my sons within the office structure and to work together, to bounce things off of each other, to take responsibility where it needs to be taken. And it's allowed us to create incredible relationships within the chiropractic profession and beyond. And I feel just so blessed and fortunate for what chiropractic as not just a profession, but as a lifestyle and a commitment has given to me and to my family, that we always want to go and be available and give back, whether it be on an individual basis or collectively through organizations and certainly through Life University.
Well, we thank you for that. It's because of people like you in our profession that are so passionate about what we do, that want to protect it and keep us advancing forward. So I thank you for laying groundwork starting in the 80s, and it definitely has paid off. So and on behalf of all of us, I'm saying thank you to you.
Thank you.
Now, Eric, how did you get started with your dad? What was your growing up with him like? You're a Chiro kid. but you
Yep.
did not take the chiropractic route. You took the business route. So can you tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about how you navigated into this space?
Yeah. So, I mean, as a Cairo kid, I would be at all the conventions, the DE conventions for those who are seasoned enough to remember.
Mhm.
And we got to hang out with Dr. Sid Williams and
Jerry Clum.
Dr. Jerry Clum, the leaders and the giants of the profession. Sid being a literal giant, shaking his hand as a 4-year-old. It felt like someone who was 20 feet tall. So
Right.
yeah, you get those unique experiences and you grow up within the profession. And I don't know if it was part of that, of growing up within the profession, that it was so normal to me that I wanted to do something different, but I never really had the inherent desire to become a chiropractor since I had so many around me. And why become one myself when I have so many great ones that can take care of me?
Right.
That was kind of the mentality. And then, going through college, I had always had a business mindset. I went to college for business, and out of school, my dad needed some help with the business. And I had always sworn that I wouldn't be a part of the business, but 13 years later, here I am. So
Right.
it was a blessing in disguise at the time, and I came on board. We, had our father-son moments both in personal and business, and we've grown through that and from that, and we've built luckily a great business that is ChiroSecure. So to jump back to your early question, we think there's only one real answer of who students should go with, and it's us. And we
Right.
can get into details about why, but just sticking to the Life University topic for a second, as some of the students and or faculty may know, we insure the school. We insure all, the faculty, staff, and students at the school because we have such a close relationship with the university. So unbeknownst to some, coming out of school, it's basically a seamless transition becoming a doctor and getting insurance through ChiroSecure because we have a relationship while you're a student. So
Right.
that's one of the many reasons that we love having life students and everyone come on board with us and become part of our family, because that's how we treat it, is a family.
Yeah, absolutely. I do remember getting my malpractice card when I entered into student clinic. I was so proud. I was like, "Oh, I think I still have it somewhere." So, it is a rewarding feeling because you realize, "Okay, this is serious now. I
Right.
have malpractice insurance." And so, and even still in school, I don't think I really knew the depth of what it was, but I knew that I was now able, or at least insured, to be able to do something. So,
Sure.
um, so how did you go? Because you were in private practice, right, Dr. Hoffman?
I
How
was.
did you go from private practice into malpractice? Was it something you noticed that was lacking in the industry? What was that light bulb and aha moment for you?
Well, there was no light bulb. There was no aha moment. It
Okay.
wasn't something I saw needed. I was in practice and I had multiple clinics and I had multiple doctors working with me at that time, which afforded me more time to be in the chiropractic political arena, I'll call it. And Dr. Jim Gregg, who is one of the originators, Dr. Sid is the only one that founded Life University, but Jim Gregg was one of the 13 that walked with him to hear that vision, help raise money, and create Life College at the time. And he became the president of the ICA and had asked me, because I was the program chairman in Michigan, and certain things had developed within that he had asked me to figure out how we can put a malpractice program together for the ICA. I created a group of 5 of us, and we brainstormed, and this was before really using computers, fax machines, and certainly no cell phones, but making a number of long distance phone calls and connecting with the right people over time. We were able to develop that policy, and over time, it needed to be taken over as a business because in the early 1990s, insurance companies were buying each other out but because it was the beginning of the computer age within business, they didn't always make it a seamless and easy transition. And we were caught up in that with the people we were doing business with, who were great, but they wound up having all kinds of issues like that. So I needed to go become a licensed insurance broker, which I did. And I have to carry that throughout all 50 states. And because of that, I was able to go and negotiate and be able to turn this into an actual business enterprise rather than just work on it part-time as a committee structure. And it became my job. And I never asked for it, didn't know much about it, but I learned very, very quickly. And, it was when somebody said to me, if you think of all of your insured doctors as if they were your patient, well, it would bring new meaning and new purpose. And that's exactly what happened, which is why I was really thankful that you used the word passionate before, because I am passionate about what I do. And it's when a doctor has an incident or an issue within their own office, even today, there's only 3 people that are going to take those phone calls. And it's myself, Eric, or his brother Brandon, because we've been doing it for so many years and able to coach our doctors to de-escalate a lot of these situations. And that's where the motivation and inspiration comes back to us, to be able to help somebody in that way. They really and truly become your patient in that moment. And it's rewarding when you can save somebody, because, I assume you've never had a malpractice claim against you, and I don't need to hear one way or another, but when somebody does, they really panic and they don't know if they're going to lose their house, their license, their marriage, whatever it happens to be. And when you can walk them back off of that ledge and just totally de-escalate what's going on and have it go away, there's not much better out there.
Yeah.
And Eric has, as much as myself, we've been to some big chiropractic events, more recently together. And the people that come up to you that you've never met, I've dealt with them for almost 30 years, some of them, and they come up to you and you know the voice, but you don't know the face. And they tell you a story about when you helped them 18 years, they know exactly. You forgot all about it, but to them, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And I mean, you kind of touched on it, but I was going to ask you, what do you find to be the most rewarding part about this? Because I know in office, seeing our patients get well and getting them back to better health is so gratifying, right? Like you see it and you're like, oh, okay, we got you there. But in malpractice world, it's not quite the same. And so you hit on some of the things that were rewarding, but can either one of you speak to what are those things or what moments have happened to you over the years where you're like, this was worth every bit of what we've done?
Yeah, I'll take the reins on a portion of that, and I'm sure my dad can fill in some of the gaps there. But in a similar sense to what he was alluding to, I view it as we are able to enable you, Dr. Jackson, and your peers to do what you were born to do, meaning treating patients, because we know, and my dad knows firsthand, how impactful it is to see a patient get to better health. And that's what you should and need to focus on, rather than the 1 out of 10,000 patients that has a fuss with you or an issue that is taking up your entire headspace and throwing you off your game. You're not able to focus 100% of your time on your great patients, and you're stuck in that mode. And so we get to take that burden off of you. And what I get to do every day is talk to your peers. And like Dr. Hoffman said, walk them off the ledge. The most common feedback I get is, oh my gosh, Eric, your voice is so calm. How can you be so calm? You helped me become calm. Well, it's easy for us. We get to take the emotion and the experience out of it. We get to deal with the same issues day in and day out. After, 13 plus years for myself, there is a repetitiveness to these issues. Patients are all humans. They all have similar issues, and they can all be resolved in similar ways. So it's for us a similar recommendation to these doctors, but it's new to them, and it's easy to calm them down and make sure that they're okay first, because unless they're okay, nothing's going to get resolved. And then give them the tools and the guidance to help resolve this one issue so they can get back to what they need to do.
Right. And it's awesome to know that you have, in the world of big business, to know that you can directly speak with the people who are making the decisions or helping you. You're not getting someone on the phone like an operator or just a call center. I think it's
Right.
very rewarding for us, and it almost feels like you've got you guys are the people that you want to call when you're in trouble. You have our back, and so versus now I've got to call the center and talk to the automated system representative. It's just like hey Eric, and so I think that's really nice and great that you guys still do that in a world that just doesn't do that as much. The human element is gone.
Yeah,
so
couldn't agree
kudos
more.
to you. Yeah,
Thank you.
kudos to you for that. Okay, so I know most of our listeners already have malpractice and know about it. However, I have quite a few listeners who are still students, and they don't really understand malpractice. They know a little bit about what it is, but could you speak to those listeners that have not yet received malpractice or are still in school and are not exactly sure what it is, the importance of it, and just give a kind of an overview, if you would, about
Sure.
what malpractice is for them?
Yeah, I'll start on this one. Let's take a look at it from a little bit of a higher level than, the strategic details of it. This is critically important, not just for the students. It's critically important for the people that already have malpractice insurance, because day after day after day, one of our team comes in and reviews somebody that called, and this is what they got quoted, whatever it happened to be, with us. And so often these people are not covered well. There are so many things that get missed, and they're just about not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people want to be cheap about it, quite frankly, and that's okay. There's different motivations to make decisions, but not when it comes to your livelihood. And when I say livelihood, that's the bigger picture, because malpractice insurance is basically errors or omissions. All professions have coverage for errors or omissions, but as a doctor, it's known as professional liability, which known the same way as malpractice. And it's not always that you did something wrong or chiropractic is dangerous. It's exactly the opposite. But we do live in a society that is highly litigious.
Yes.
And the biggest claim that we really get to deal with on an ongoing basis are alleged stroke claims. You caused me to have that stroke. And why do they say that? Because the emergency room told them that, or another doctor told them, or a family member. And it's amazing that we have, at this point, scientific evidence to back us up and help us win these claims that we didn't have 10, 15, 20 years ago. But with that in mind, when someone has a claim like that, it's not if you pay out or not. Let's say you're right and you win. Okay, it doesn't matter if it still costs you $100, $200, $300,000 to defend yourself all the way from beginning to end of that claim. Just hiring some of the top expert witnesses to get you to that win is a fortune. And it can simply bankrupt somebody just to defend themselves, and you have no choice but to defend yourself.
Right.
Otherwise, you lose. And if you lose, that claim or that judgment will go against you and be attached to you forever. And I know some people will talk about, well, I'm going to have a Swiss bank account. I'm not talking about, how to skirt it. I'm talking
Right.
about what it can do to affect your life, not just now, but in the future, because certainly the students will say to us, well, I have nothing. Let them go for it. Well, it's you have nothing now, but hopefully you'll have a lot down the road, and you don't want this to be in the way for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Do you want to
Absolutely.
add more detail to that, Eric, though?
Yeah, just to, add a little color to it, the importance of any insurance policy, the reason insurance exists is to take that risk away from your business or anything else that you're dealing with in your personal life. So this is no different. You're basically hedging bets that if there's a patient that has an issue with me, I'm not going to have to worry about it. And that's the whole point of malpractice insurance is you don't want to take away from your business, your time, your expertise as a doctor in order to defend yourself in a court of law for something you probably didn't even do because chiropractic is so safe. And so from that perspective, we take a very specific approach to onboarding our doctors. And we've already alluded to it, but it's a very tailored approach that we look at the doctor first individually and assess their needs and whatever it is that they're dealing with, whatever it is that their practice is structured as, and we want to make sure they're covered from top to bottom and there's no gaps. And what Dr. Hoffman was talking about before is we get to see the policies coming into us from some of our competitors, and we're blown away that did you not talk to anybody? How did you decide on how this policy was set up? It's crazy that it still exists in that way. And then they're shocked that, I can't believe I was left bare this whole time. What if something happened? Thank God it didn't in most cases. But
Right.
we do get to hear those stories that it did, and they got screwed, and they are struggling now as a result with their business and their life. We get to hear about the divorces, things like that, unfortunately. And we don't want to have that happen on our watch. So,
And here's one example from a real life situation that took place. One of our doctors had hired another doctor, not uncommon. And they said, oh, call ChiroSecure and get a policy. Told them what to get. And, we direct all of that as well.
Right.
When you're working for one of our doctors, we want to make sure everyone's covered from top to bottom. And so we went through everything with this new doctor, sent them over the application, didn't hear back. So as just normal follow-up, the team followed up. I think 2 or 3 times, never heard back. Okay, we're done. Maybe she didn't get the job. Maybe she decided to go elsewhere, whatever it is. And we just moved on. Well, about a month or 2 months later, I get a call from the owner doctor saying, hey, we have a problem. Dr. So-and-so just adjusted the patient and we had to send them to the ER with a possible stroke. I said, well, you have a lot of problems because she never signed up for her malpractice insurance. And as it turns out, that did become a problem. There was no coverage. And the woman patient, thank God, wound up okay, but wanted all of the bills paid, wanted this, that. And it took me on a personal level. I spoke to this new doctor, her mother, the owner doctor numerous times over the months and helped them indirectly get a settlement with this patient that was, I'll call it easy. It's still a lot of money out of your pocket, but it could have been disastrous.
Right.
And she didn't even want to go back into practice at that point.
Wow.
And okay, but we need you. And this happens, just be responsible and, take it from there. So that's just, a brief summary of what transpired, but these things are real and they do happen.
What do you notice in terms of lack of coverage or gaps in insurance that are not, that you guys have versus what some other companies, and we don't have to obviously name names, but where people are not thinking, I think individuals think about, okay, I'm covered in practice, but are you covered on the computer, or is your email privacy HIPAA compliant? Things like that. So what are some of those offhand topics or things that most people don't realize malpractice also covers you for?
That's great. Yeah. So it was back in 2005 that I saw these insurance companies were going to start coming after doctors, post-payment reviews, we call them audits, and asking for money back. And I had this brainstorm that if the doctors had enough money within their insurance policy to go and fight the insurance company, maybe they'd stop picking on us. So we added insurance audit defense into our policy. Nobody else had it.
Yeah.
And I was wrong, by the way, because it's cost us a fortune over the years, but it has helped people stay in business and be okay. All the other carriers that are in our competition, in our space as competition, most all of them have picked up one level or another of that insurance audit protection, but that's really important to people. But we were also the first to have within our policy as a standard coverage, cyber liability. You were talking about the computer, things like that. We also are the only ones that have employer liability. So if you fire somebody and they come after you, there's some coverage to defend you in that too. So we do a lot of firsts. Most all the carriers have some level of sexual misconduct defense. We have a ton. Some have for licensing board issues, HIPAA issues, but we're the only ones that have all of those available as part of our base malpractice policy.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Did I miss anything, Eric?
No, the only other two things, the two most common things that I get to deal with in structure, meaning how the policy is set up, and what makes us, going back to what we talked about earlier, unique, is that we look at the whole picture first. So number one, the most important thing to us, there's two types of policies. We don't have to get into the details of the structure of them, but there's one called claims made. It's like a renter's concept, and one called occurrence, which is more of a permanent concept. So we talk to our owner doctors all the time, and we tell them that you really need to make sure all of your associates are on an occurrence policy, because it's the permanent style of insurance. It means for them that the coverage they have in place during their time in the office, because most associates don't last forever, is permanent and cannot be lost. Versus claims made, the opposite is true. They're renting the coverage. If they stop renting it, it can go away. And so that's really important from an employer perspective and clinic owner perspective. That's one aspect that a lot of other carriers get wrong or just don't even advise on.
Right. Because the occurrence is what covers you in 10 years from now, right?
Right.
So I'm practicing and 10 years goes by and somebody makes a claim against me at some office that I was at 10 years ago. But I have occurrence, so I'm covered. Versus claims made, I would not have been covered during that time frame. Is that correct?
Unless you buy tail coverage. Yeah. So claims made, like I was saying, it's a renter's style, meaning you're renting the coverage as long as you're paying for it. And it's good. It functions in the same way as occurrence while it's active. When you cancel it, to your point, if you leave an office or something, then each insurance company will give you two options. Option one is, great, you're done renting it, so you can either forfeit everything you've just paid for back to day one. It'll cease to exist as if it never happened. Or you can pay, $3,000 for this tail coverage, which is a way to buy your coverage backwards. And that'll make it permanent as if it were an occurrence policy.
Gotcha.
Occurrence has the tail built in from the beginning. So it's permanent from the day you buy it until the day you cancel it for that period of time.
And if you cancel it, you're still covered forever for anything that happened while you had the policy.
Exactly. Okay. So the point of the matter is that's important for associates, because as an owner, you know the coverage is permanent.
Yeah.
The second part is what's called additional insured endorsement. What that means in practice is if you're an owner, similarly, and you have an entity has liability. So ABC Chiropractic, LLC, let's just call it that for today's purpose. if you have that, then you should have all of your associates, their individual policies, name ABC Chiropractic LLC onto their policy. Because what attorneys do is they like to name the doctor who treated the patient who allegedly got injured, that doctor, John Smith, as well as the company they're practicing under, ABC Chiropractic. And unless it's listed on the policy, it's not defended for that one claim. So it's important that the corporation's covered in the same way across the board. And that's what we also get to see when doctors come over to us is missing. And so those are just two really important examples of, a lack of training or a lack of oversight on the policies that we really take seriously and make sure that our doctors know how to get covered properly.
Oh, yeah. So, I noticed that the claims made tends to be a little less expensive than the occurrence. So people tend to choose that, especially coming out of school. Mm-hmm. Is there a better policy for a new first year, second year doc versus the other? Or is it, again, just kind of how we talked about which one is covered more? Because I know the new docs, they have very low rates when they start. So the likelihood, we're assuming that they would hurt someone, is very low. Their risk is very minimal. Mm-hmm. Do you have ideas or thoughts or suggestions on that, or how you would guide them, or is it still a personal preference?
So ultimately, it comes down to a personal preference, unless they're an associate, in which case we would tell the owner, don't make it a personal preference, make it a requirement.
Right.
But let's assume we're talking to somebody who's going into practice themselves or starting their own practice. What I tell them is it is a personal decision. I get it. The dollars and cents matter, but it's an important decision to think about today, because we get the foresight of getting to talk to these doctors 10 years from now, and they forget the conversation that we had. Mm-hmm. And then they're, blown away that, I have to pay for this extra thing with claims made. So to give you an example of how that conversation goes, it's if they're coming from Life University, great news. We have, a discounted model for you coming out of school. So it's going to be cheap no matter what. We're talking a starting point, depending where you are, of claims made being $250 for the entire year.
It's even less in Georgia. We're talking Georgia. So
150, whatever you want to call it. Versus
cheaper than my car insurance.
Exactly. Versus $300 for occurrence. It's still more, but do you really want to worry down the line that you could leave practice, you can go out of the country, you can take a new job that has different coverage requirements, and you have to cancel your claims made and be hit with a bill, which is usually about 2 times the annual premium you're paying the year you cancel. So if the insurance gets up to, let's just say $1,000 for the year, you're talking about a $2,000 bill at the point where you're either leaving the country or, stopping practice, where you have other bills to pay. And so I get to have those conversations with these doctors 4 years down the road, and they say, I don't remember you telling me that. Why didn't I go with occurrence? Well, actually, I did. And this is exactly why we recommend occurrence. It's not better at covering you. It's safer. And it gives you peace of mind that you never have to worry about buying tail or losing coverage, those sorts of things that people don't think about. So we do understand dollars and cents matter. There's a reason why it's less expensive. And, if it's me, I'm going with occurrence because it's just out of sight, out of mind, and it's the safer of the two.
All right, let's hammer home just a couple of points of that. Number one, it does start less expensive, but the increases each year for a new doctor are greater on the claims made than the occurrence because it has to catch up. So in the end, it's less than 5% of a difference on a mature policy. So it is only at the beginning. The other thing that happens way too often for us, Eric mentioned, we educate our owner doctors that it's safest for them to make sure that they bring a new doctor on, that the new doctor has an occurrence policy for the reasons we spoke about earlier. And they'll constantly hire people, not that it's a good thing or bad thing, but that they have their own coverage already. And it's often a claims-made policy for the reasons you spoke about, getting out of school. I want to save every penny I can, rightfully so. But then I say to the owner doctor, well, you tell them you'll pick up their coverage now going forward. They need to take care of what they had in the past. And you'll know if you made the right decision if they purchase their own tail coverage or if they let it lapse. Because that's what would happen to you the next round, if they left you and needed to switch over. And it's a 50-50 shot on that, to be honest with you. But that is what happens, is someone will go to work for somebody else. We don't really, care if you're an owner and you're going to have your own policy, you're responsible for it. So whatever happens, happens. But it's not the same as when I graduated. People work with other doctors, and that needs to be taken into consideration much more in today's environment.
So let me ask you this. So this is where I said we get into conversations. So there are a lot of companies or doctors who are not just associates, they're working as coverage doc, right? Locum tenens.
Yeah.
Is it better as a locum tenens doc to have the occurrence than versus the claims made, because they are working for so many different places? Does it matter?
Great question. So there's two things to consider. Number one, I can speak for us because this is how we're structured. I assume other carriers have a similar structure, but we have a benefit of all of our policies that allows for locum tenens coverage to be included as a part of the person who's getting coverage. So let me unwrap that for you. So Dr. Jackson, you have a practice, you're going on vacation for 2 weeks. You bring in one of these coverage doctors. We would tell you, call us. We have this form. It's a locum tenens application where you indicate this coverage doctor's information and the dates that they're going to be in your office where you're not going to be. And we will add them to your policy as if they were you for that period of time. So they're covered in the exact same way as you are. That's
under your policy.
Under your policy.
As if they were an additional insured?
As if they were you.
As if they were you. Okay.
Yes. So the important thing about that is you cannot be in the office. You cannot be treating at the same time. This is truly meant for, you're out sick or you're on vacation, you're on maternity leave, whatever it may be, where you're not practicing and you need somebody else to come in. So that's an important thing to know and an important thing to do because it covers both doctors for whatever they need in the way that you are covered. Because you don't really know how somebody else is covered. And that brings you to the next point. The locum tenens doctor, they should have their own coverage and it should be occurrence because it's safer. But if they have claims made and unbeknownst to you, after they cover your office, a week later, they cancel it and let all of that coverage go, you have no idea about that. But if a claim comes up, technically they were an uninsured doctor working in your office and you're not covered for that. So if they name that doctor, your corporation,
now
you're on
I'm liable.
Exactly. And
unless you completed the locum tenens application and they were listed. Yeah.
So another great example of, what we try to educate on.
I think that's a huge aha.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that I don't think a lot of people are doing that or even know about that. So I'm very glad that we talked about that because
for sure.
Because I do locum tenens. I mean, I have an occurrence policy, but nonetheless, wow, you've got my brain thinking about some things. So these meetings, these interviews are always so informational for me as well, because I am a practicing doc that I learned so much for myself about how to be a better business owner. So that's amazing. That's great to know. Now I have 2 more questions.
Sure.
And then, okay, so what about the docs that are traveling? Let's say they're either traveling to teach somewhere or doing a seminar someplace. So they're based in Georgia and they decide to go to Michigan and they're going to teach a technique seminar in Michigan. Or they work for a company or somebody hires them based somewhere else and says, hey, when you're in my state, can you take care of me? How does that work? And is there a way for them to be covered for out of state adjustments or treatment?
So another first for us, we have a lot of doctors like that.
Okay.
And so several years ago, I can't remember how long ago it was, but Dr. Hoffman and I wrote into our policy, in the definition section of the policy, that we will cover our doctors under an educational setting if they're teaching a course that, you know, includes treatment or adjusting of some sort. So that's something that is included in all of our policies, that we're intending to cover those scenarios, that doctors travel to a seminar or a CE course, they teach technique, whatever it may be, something goes wrong. Technically, they're not supposed to be covered under most other policies because there's no language about it, but we added that so that our doctors were covered.
We have to have the premise first that if you're treating out of state, we're assuming you're not licensed where you're treating.
Right.
Because it could go either way. If you're licensed, your policy covers you.
Yeah.
Period, with us. And if you're not licensed and you're teaching in that environment, that's when what Eric just described comes in, and you're fully covered under our policy, as opposed to going to XYZ seminar in Wyoming and decide to adjust people.
That isn't viewed as an educational setting. So in that context, it's not our rule, or it's not any insurance company's rule, it's the licensing board's rule, that you need to be licensed in order to treat a chiropractic patient in a given state. So there are certain exceptions to that. I know some states, I think Nevada may be one of them, that offers temporary licensure because there's probably so many conventions there. So it's always best, we tell our doctors, just, you can call the licensing board or the association in that state to find out more info, but it's up to you as the doctor to make sure you're doing things legally and appropriately. And so another important question we got this, you know, every time the Olympics comes around, we seem to get questions about, hey, I'm traveling with an Olympic athlete to another country. Can I treat them there? And the answer for us, again, is yeah, our coverage is worldwide. There's a clear definition in our policy, coverage territory, it says worldwide. What that means is we're intending to cover you as long as you've established that patient-doctor relationship in your home state where you're licensed, and you traveled with this person to a different country, as long as they don't have any laws or requirements that you need to follow, then we're intending to cover you. But, you know, if you get sued in Russia, we don't have Russian attorneys. So the lawsuit has to be brought in the United States for fairly obvious reasons. But the point is, to the travel question, we're intending to cover you wherever you go, as long as you're following the law. Or if you're in an educational capacity, teaching a technique, we have a clause for that as well.
Perfect. And so do docs need to communicate before they travel to ensure that they, so it's already
part of the policy in the contract.
That's awesome. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay, so my last question, this is kind of a hot topic, and we touched on a little bit earlier, but Dr. Hoffman, I know that you are also passionate about research and respect it highly. And so I wanted to talk about stroke studies, right? And why some findings that you've come across or things of that nature, because we definitely seem to get dragged through the mud, even though the third leading cause of death in America is from doctor mistakes, not ours, but nonetheless, the moment that a stroke happens, it's a chiropractor's fault. And I mean, we're making CNN. So I'd like for you to just kind of just touch on in a little bit, some evidence that you have found, some research that's relevant to us, and things that we can take back to our office to educate our students and our patients on.
Sure. Well, let me give you just a couple of details that have to do with strokes in general. Just in the United States alone, there are about 795,000 strokes occurring annually. most of those, about over 600,000 of those, are first-time strokes, which means that, almost 200,000 people have had multiple strokes. But there are different types of strokes, and the ones that we're associated with mostly have to do with dissection of the vertebral artery. And that is about 1.1 per 100,000. I've seen statistics way higher, way lower, but that's the most current that I've seen out there. And if you just calculate that out amongst our population, that's only about 3,600 strokes a year that have to do with anything related to a chiropractor. And when we think of it from that perspective, there's not much there. And as a result of that, over the years, in dealing with the attorneys that we have been blessed with, we have been able to find the right team of experts around the country that cite some of the studies from a medical and a chiropractic perspective. And, it goes back to probably the first best one that's in recent times was David Cassidy, who's still up in Canada. But in 2008, he put out a study in Spine magazine about these stroke victims and what happens to them if they go to how many of them went to a chiropractor versus a medical doctor. And Kozlov did a follow-up study on that, and then there was one follow-up to that. All of these studies came to the same conclusion, that there's no convincing evidence to support a causal link between chiropractic adjustment, they call it manipulation, and a cervical artery dissection. So if we know all of that, we want to tell the doctors, hey, do not ever practice from fear, but be aware. And there's other studies like Walter Herzog, who's also still around, because it was in 2012 that he did a study that indicated on cadavers that it took 58 to 62% strain on the vertebral artery for it to have mechanical failure. Now, these are also dead people, let alone someone alive. I don't know about you, but I couldn't take someone's neck and get that kind of stretch and strain to be able to ever have that kind of effect on them. And that is big. So, for a doctor in their office, I want them to be aware of the signs and symptoms, which we don't have time to go into all of that today, but we do, our own events, or we speak for, we talked about Life University. We're at every event there speaking on all of these topics, but every doctor should know what some of the red flags are. And if you have enough of those red flags, you want to refer these patients out for imaging. Not a typical x-ray, but whether it be an MRI, CAT scan, depending on what, in that case, an emergency room would think would be the most appropriate at that moment in time, because that's the only way to really determine, is there a dissection present or not, since a lot of people, the public, will come into the doctor, and what we believe is that they're already in a stroke episode, and that's why they have the signs and symptoms that they're having. But the doctor doesn't realize, because this has been a patient of mine for 20 years, or it's a first visit. Well, I deal with headaches and neck pain all the time. So what makes this different than all other times? But again, it's about knowing what all the signs and symptoms are and being cautious to go and get the right testing done, whether it be just to clear them or to potentially save their life. Because we go and adjust them, and all of a sudden, whoa, I'm getting dizzy, I'm vomiting, I'm this, I'm that. And all of a sudden you're calling 911, and all they can compute is, oh, chiropractor, adjustment, stroke. And it was being too often in the wrong place at the wrong time. more than anything else. But we do have the research, and we can now tell based on certain imaging of when the actual dissection occurred based on the age of the blood. And if you know that, in pretty much, I want to say all, but I won't, pretty much most all of the cases that we've had that we can have those studies, it always preceded the visit to the chiropractor. And that sure helps us change the game and win. And that's a win for the doctor. It's a win for the profession, all the way around. Anything you'd add to that, Eric?
He hit the nail on the head. The research is clear. There's no causal link. So we start from that perspective, and not to be fearful in your clinic. That's number one. But the red flags are really important, because where doctors lose portions of claims, not the is this causal or not, because that's clear. We win those all day long. But where doctors have issues in a lawsuit setting is, Dr. John Smith, who has an ego the size of Texas, he says, "Oh, you're having a headache. You vomited once. Okay, go lay in the traction room for an hour and see if you get better." And that patient, passes away in the traction room, because strokes timing matters. That's a clear and obvious negligence on the doctor's part, because he's supposed to be trained to recognize emergency situations and refer to the proper doctor or proper facility. So that's just an extreme example. It hasn't happened to us, just made it up. But that's just an extreme example.
We do have people that hold up care with good intentions.
Yeah,
but
it's something that just has to be paid attention to. And you have to know the right paths for patients to take under your watch and under your clinic setting. So that's just, again, one example of difficulties in these claims is when doctors don't pay attention to the signs and symptoms, or don't take the right path, or maybe their documentation isn't great. Maybe they have the same note for the last 40 visits on this patient. That's never good, because how are you going to tell a jury that, the patient was exactly the same for 2 years, especially when they just had a stroke coming out of your office? It's examples like that I get to talk to doctors about all the time. And this is what we really dive deep in our classes, in our, webinars, etc., about these things to pay attention to. Documentation is hugely important. Communication's hugely important. Referring out, those are just a few things that I would add.
Now, Dr. Hoffman, I know that you will be taking a trip to Atlanta this fall.
Yes.
Teaching at the Life Ball CE courses, and you're doing risk management. So are these some of the topics we talked about today, some things you'll go into greater detail with during fall CE? Yeah,
so just a synopsis. We're going to have a little bit of fun with it at the same time, because these are serious topics that nobody really wants to hear about.
Right.
But again, we don't talk about it from a fear base. We talk about it from an awareness, totally different concept. And we're going to talk about sexual misconduct. We're going to talk about what happens when a patient wants money back from you. I'm not going to get into all the reasons today, but it happens. And, we're going to talk about licensing board complaints. We're going to talk about strokes, all of the different things that people experience at one point or another being in an active practice, and how to be human, serve your patients, but not have to be defensive, just aware.
Absolutely. Great. Well, that's awesome. So for those of you that are listening, this episode is airing definitely before fall CE. And so
love to see you.
On by, and let's support Dr. Hoffman during his class. And if you have any lingering questions, if you have questions or our conversation today sparked questions for you, please feel free to send us an email or reach out to ChiroSecure. And I'm sure that they would be happy to answer your question. Or please do stop by the class during fall CE so that we can get those questions answered for you, because we'd rather take the time to make sure that you're knowledgeable on things, and not malpractice isn't something we ever want to guess about, right? So let's just make sure we have the knowledge. So if you have any questions, please do reach out to us. And I'm sure if you're in class and you have a question in class, somebody sitting next to you or behind you or in front of you probably has a similar question. So no dumb questions. No, there are no dumb questions in malpractice. We want to answer them correctly. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hoffman and Eric. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of give us an overview of ChiroSecure and malpractice. We haven't done this topic before, so I definitely think this was worthwhile. Our listeners learned a lot of information. I learned some new things today, so I'm always excited when I get to learn something new. And I just want to thank you for spending your afternoon with me.
Thanks for a great conversation.
Absolutely. Well, this has been another episode of the Chiropractic Connection. We've made a new connection today, so make sure you get all their information, and we'll see you on the next episode. Our executive producer is Dr. Amber Jackson. Our hosts are Dr. Amber Jackson and Dr. Deborah Little. Production staff is Communications and Events Coordinator Sequoia Gonzalez. Our podcast speakers are Dr. Patience Canty and Dr. Mark Ellis. A special thanks to podcast founder Dr. Noel Stiley and Public Relations Chair Dr. Nyla Smith.